So let's have a lesson on this piece. This piece comes from my grade 4 repertoire lessons book, and there's a link for that under the video, but of course if you have the piece in another book, just follow the lesson for free. And even if you don't have the piece, just pick up some of the tips that we're going to talk about. But in my book, there's a couple of pages of lesson material, followed by the piece, the performance edition of the piece, so it kind of prepares you. So that's what we're going to be going through today. So because this piece is in E minor, same as the last piece, we're not going to do the note review again. Instead, we're going to do some chord review. So we're going to go over some chords. But this is such a great intermediate piece filled with just like a really prominent melody up on the first two strings and some nice, it just has like everything that you would want from a classical guitar piece. But it's not too difficult. There are some tricky things to practice for sure, and lots to talk about, but it's pretty manageable, and the melody really pops out of the texture very nicely because it's so far away from the bass notes, and you get to explore just more of the guitar in this piece. So let's explore some of the guitar right now. So I'm going to play a couple of bars, and this is a good way to practice. You know, you take some tricky bars or just some unfamiliar bars, and then you kind of relate it to chords that they're based off of. So for example, in bar 3, we have this passage. This passage is a B7 chord. So the overall form would be like that, or if you did a bar A chord. There's chord diagrams in the book. But when you're playing it, you can identify this as the B7 chord, so those notes, and then a non-chord tone. And I've marked the non-chord tones in the score here, in the example. Non-chord tones are simply notes that are not part of the chord. So in every melody, there's going to be, the melody will pass through notes that aren't necessarily in the chord. And that can happen in the accompaniment as well, but especially in the melody. And so being able to identify what notes are part of the chord and what notes are not part of the chord helps you identify what the composer might want from those notes. And we're going to talk about that after we review the chords, because you can treat non-chord tones in specific musical ways. So bar 3, based on B7 chord, or a B7 chord with the bar A. Bar 9, this is a good one to practice just for technique purposes. So these are all chord notes, except for this one, this E, until it resolves back to the D. It's all based off a D7 chord. You know, when you're playing jazz. So a D7 chord, and that passage, that non-chord tone E on the second string there. We're going to talk about tension and resolution just after the chords. Bar 10, the G chord, again with a non-chord tone E, based on this G chord or a fuller G chord. So this is a great way to practice. You get to practice that part of the piece. Maybe work on your slur or just your chord shape overall. You get really familiar with things, but you can also relate it to what chord is actually being played, which helps you memorize the piece, understand the piece, and so much more. You don't have to know much of the music theory right now, but by going over this in my book again and again after each one of my books, you start to become familiar with all these chord shapes, which helps you the next time you encounter the chords in a piece. Bar 11. By the way, you're hearing a little tweet. There's a whole bunch of kingbirds that have a nest just over there, so you'll hear them squeaking away. There's some babies in there. Anyway, bar 11. Again, that's based on B7. Sometimes tricky to identify because there's no low B in it, right? And then the non-chord tone C, but it resolves to a B there. Bar 15 is an A minor chord. Oh, sorry, I'll play bar 15. Of course, the A sharp is a non-chord tone. based on this A minor chord, right? Different fingerings, same chord. Bar 16, that's that arrival. That's a B major chord. So in this chord, we're playing a B up here, so we're just transferring this B from here and putting it up there. But those two notes there are all the same notes. Bar 25. All of those are chord tones. This is an E7 chord. Or an E7 chord here. Bar 26. Those are all chord tones as well. Based on this A minor chord, or your fuller A minor chord. Remember, all these chords are generally based on triads, so 3-note chords. So there's only 3 notes in all of this chord, but notes get repeated. So you can have, there's so many combinations of that chord. So there's lots of A minors out there. Okay, let's talk about tension and resolution in the melody here. So in this section from bar 9 to 16, we have those non-chord tones, which we just talked about. And when we play those non-chord tones, it's often something that the composer will want you to bring out for expressive effect. Non-chord tones, notes that aren't part of the chord, will often sound dissonant, or at least they'll sometimes sound pretty smooth, but like they're not part of the chord, so they're kind of a spicy note. They're interesting, at the very least. So when you're playing them, it's often common to bring them out and then resolve non-chord tone to chord tone, tension release, tension resolution. So you can accent that non-chord tone on the beat and then resolve it on the offbeat. I'm over exaggerating a little bit. Non-chord tone there. Now, I resolve that non-chord tone quite strongly because that final chord there in the example in bar 16 is a B chord, and it's going to an E chord when you repeat. So it's actually a chord of tension. So non-chord tones don't always resolve to a softer note afterwards. Sometimes if you're going on afterwards, or there's some kind of harmonic reason like this B going to E minor, then it's a reason to keep the energy up. And for now, it's like I'm generally just telling you that. You don't have to know all of the stuff, but over time, the more we go over it, you'll start to understand it. Especially if you start going through all of my books, you're going to start realizing when you have these options to either resolve tension or keep the tension up high. It's also just an interpretive choice, so you can make that choice when you feel it is necessary. You might do it because of music theory. You might do it because your teacher tells you to do it and is helping you. Or you might just do it because you think it sounds correct. It sounds right. It sounds good that way. And that's valid as well. So let's just do a quick walkthrough of the piece. Starts up here in 10th position. You could repeat the A finger the whole time, by the way. You could do that. I'm playing most of them with my M finger, and then M and then P and A together, just to make sure I alternate, but it's not such a big deal in this piece because there's lots of accompaniment along the way, and that slur breaks it up. But you can at least start with the M finger at the very beginning. When you shift, just remember your second finger can be used as a guide finger along this string. So with guide fingers, you release the pressure because you don't want glissandos everywhere, but you release the pressure, but keep your finger on the string just to help you with alignment. It's when you don't have to find that string again. really goes into the bass. When you do that bass note there, just make sure that your hand is aligned. You might have gotten out of alignment when you did the B7 chord from before, or this, but make sure that this knuckle is nice and cozy with the fingerboard so that the fourth finger can reach. Watch as I push my knuckle away, my reach becomes less possible. I can't reach that G down there. So, but if this knuckle's there, then I can reach it no problem, even with a curved finger. So from the bass line there in bar 4. Guide finger 2, you just slide it up to the 3rd position. And then you either repeat or go on. I'm going to go on. Watch the right hand fingering there because you do want to alternate. So I've been kind of ending the bar with A and then doing these non-chord tone resolutions with M and I. Same thing there. This is a grade 4 piece because it just navigates the guitar much more, right? Lots of shifting and chords involved. It's not that hard actually, but you have to know it quite well. You have to know the chords and you have to know the shifts really well. So take your time practicing it, go nice and slow until you know it, and then I don't think you'll find it too difficult once you really know it. Into bar 25. I don't always let go of the basses, like that one's notated as an 8th note. But I let them ring sometimes. And same thing there, I like to keep the B ringing even though it's notated as a quarter note. I do mute this with both hands. Keep your second finger down. That way that E can sustain into the final chord. There's not too much to talk about in this piece. Bring the melody out, you know, practice that melody on its own. Keep the accompaniment soft, any repeated notes. Those notes there, never crash them out. Just keep that accompaniment nice and soft, bring the melody out. That's pretty much the piece. You have to deal with that intersection that we practiced. You could use more rubato than I used. I didn't use very much at all. You could meander through it more. But that's your choice. And then besides that, the texture is pretty similar. Just keep bringing that melody out. So like I said, I really like this piece because I think it's a great addition to the grade 4 level. There's not a ton of pieces that are quite this satisfying and yet also open up the whole guitar, all 12 frets, as much as this. So I think it's a really nice inclusion for the grade level. So I was happy to find it and put it in the book. Next up though, we'll be doing 2 pieces by Torrega.